All right. Hello. Hello. This is Abel Pacheco, your host of the Five Talents podcast. We are super excited today to have Brian Bradley. He's here with us in the flesh, in the virtual time. What's up, Brian? How's it going, bro?
What's up? Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, Abel, for having me on. And it's good. It's an important topic. I'm going to try to keep it fun and not legally dense. And I'm not anyone's attorney or legal guru here. We're just going to be talking in generalities. And I think that we are really going to learn a lot today. I just hope that the concepts that, I talk about help you and your listeners understand this area of law, asset protection better and asset protection trust, and just how to protect yourselves as you start investing, growing, cash flowing, and, becoming your own bosses.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited about it. It's going to be a good conversation. We had pre discussion and I'm like, man, this is exactly where the listeners need to take note of. So if you don't know Brian, he is the senior managing partner at Bradley Legal Corp. Man, he is a really good, just leading educator, is nationally recognized in asset protection for some of the people that are listeners. If you think about yourself, you guys are high risk professionals, entrepreneurs, real estate investors. We have a lot of high net worth individuals and ultra high net worth, family offices, things like that. So collectively, their group protects about $5 billion worth of assets. So in one way, shape, or form or another, if you're in our world, you're going to listen and be able to take note of some really good strategies that Brian's going to give us. And he's going to give us, really high level. None of the stuff you're going to learn how to do in 30 minutes. But if you hear something that sparks some interest, and that may lead you to like, oh, okay, this is what I need action on. This is what I need to move forward and take my next step. So their firm, they were selected as the best attorneys of America in 2022, 2020, Lawyers of Distinction, the last few years in a row, Super Lawyers, Rising Stars 2021. They were nominated as the top 100 high-stake litigators and the top 100 in real estate. I mean, they have a lot of pedigree, so we're pumped. And Brian, man, thanks for coming. So, let's start, if I can, in your own words, tell us about you and what you do, and let's just start a great conversation here, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like you said, I'm an asset protection attorney. And what we do is just protect investments and your real estate and your wealth with this fancy word called asset protection. I'll break down what that even means, in a little bit later. But first, I think it's really important to kind of, know the lay of the landscape, like what's really going on. Why do we even care about all of this? And I got into asset protection from the litigation and trial side of the law, and having clients being sued and their lives just turned completely upside down, coming to me after they were already being sued. And at that point, you're just too far down the rabbit hole. So it's like going to go get car insurance after you had a car accident, or home insurance after your house caught fire and burnt down. You're just not going to get the coverage for it. It's not going to happen. And I see a lot of people thinking that they don't need to do anything until after the fact. I mean, that's just human nature, right? Like most people don't even go get a family estate plan until it's too late. Like, oh, grandpa just died and he had no will or estate plan, because we don't think about the downfalls of life until they already happened to us. It's just human nature. And so one thing that's important to understand is for asset protection and any strategy to work that you're going to create, it has to be done beforehand, before you're under attack. You can't just ride lady luck and, pretend we're just going to let it ride in Vegas style. That's just wishful thinking. You're going to go bankrupt that way. Or they think that their insurance will always cover them, which it won't. It's important to have, and you need insurance. You need good insurance. But we're getting more and more claims that are radically in excess of just even the insurance coverage. So being underinsured is a big problem. Or you forget to level up your insurance as your wealth levels up, or having an umbrella policy. But then people think that having even just an umbrella policy means that it just covers everything else. And it doesn't. It really just provides more capital or coverage with the same escape clauses that insurance has. Like, they're not going to be covering you for intentional wrongdoing or fraud. And almost every big case that you're going to get sued, which we call a doomsday lawsuit, like a lawsuit that can clean you out, there's always going to be an allegation of intentional wrongdoing or frauds. And that then gives insurance companies the wiggle room out to say, hey, we're just not going to cover you. And if you think that we're wrong, go ahead and sue us at the same time. So that's how they walk away from big coverages. Or a big one is that they think that their family estate plan, known as a revocable living trust, will protect them, which they can't. They're not designed to. Those only come to effect when you die to avoid probate. I'll break down trust later on so we can break that down into greater detail. Just remember, your traditional family revocable living trust is not an asset protection trust. It's not there.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the teeth for it. Doesn't have the ability to.
Yeah.
Or the really big misconception that's been created over the last 4 or 5 years is that the LLC is just a one-stop silver bullet. They missed the first letter, first word, limited. They're not hiding the fact. This is just base layer entry 101 layer of protection. We'll break down the misconceptions in a little bit, but just realize the LLC, it's not a dragon slayer. This is just limited liability. Yeah. And then the sad thing is, you just look around and our legal system is just broken. We're just a sue happy nirvana in the United States. And if you don't mind me letting this set the stage just a little bit further, with what's going on in the world, because I think it adds more context to know what we're actually fighting against. The legal system's drastically changed over the last 40 years. It's no longer about justice, but redistributing wealth, from the haves, which is you, the people listening, the ones trying to gather more wealth and more assets, to the have-nots. But over the past 40 years, things that didn't happen in the past, or they just weren't allowed to happen in the past, like contingency fee lawyers or law firm advertising, they're commonplace now. And this created a cultural shift of a predatory legal system that's no longer, again, about justice, but it's about profits. And then when you get into the world of high net worth and affluent families and wealth, kind of the world that I work in with my clients, this level of protection, we now have to deal with more of a macroeconomic global look of what's going on. And the big picture really is that we have a global financial system that has structurally deep-rooted issues, okay? Along with government-backed fiat currencies that are now in question. And this also, look at what we're living in now. It includes the US dollar. And then a monetary policy today that everybody can see is very plain and simple. It's just inflate or die. And then we got governments looking for deep and accessible pools of financing, meaning your money and your assets, along with financial repression, monetary, economic manipulation. And all this is just adding more challenges to protect your wealth. And so asset protection is your modern best bet to then level the playing field by using all the different legal tools that we have. Where you fall in place as more of a client profile, it just depends what the attorney that you talk to. We would go through an analysis and see okay, where do you lie in this matrix? And we go from there. And so what we really do is just try to provide you peace of mind and then lifestyle preservation. And it really focuses on just how collectible you are at the end of the day. What asset protection is. Asset protection isn't traditional estate planning. It's modern estate planning. And what we're doing is just placing a legal barrier between your assets and the person trying to sue you, the creditors that are trying to take your money from you. Again, before it's...
If I can, let me pause it here, Brian, because I think you've covered a ton. So let me just make sure we for our regular listener base, right? Because I do want to come back to what is asset protection. Yeah. But before we do that, right, there was a couple of things that I heard we took notes of. Man, proactivity versus being reactive. Yeah. And no matter what state or position or status or experience you have, this one's a big one. A lot of our investors that talk to us today, they are very reactive before they start making moves, and they're thinking, hey, I'm gonna work hard, I'm gonna make a lot of money. Eventually I'll have enough money to invest, and some point down the road, it'll work out, and I'm gonna learn as much as I can, take as much education, but they never really move to being proactive. And the things that I heard that, is in alignment is man, that is the same thing. If you don't take action on the investment, if you don't do some of these protections in advance, it doesn't matter. You can't go and solve this thing. You can't buy insurance after your accident and expect it to work. You can't think you're going to want to invest, never make it, and have a sum of wealth to acquire. You also can't, take some of these steps in arrears. You've got to do them proactively, right? So I loved all that stuff. So
Yeah, well,
you gotta take on it now.
Yeah, and in the world of the law, when you think about it, if you know you're going to get sued and then you move an asset knowing you're going to get sued, well, then you fall in the world of fraudulent transfer arguments and defenses. And the judge would just say, undo what you did. It was foreseeable that you were going to get sued. You knew it. You hit the person with the car, moved the money, or bought an asset the next day. Statute of limitations about to run. You finally get sued. A judge is going to say that was a fraudulent transfer. You knew you were going to get sued, and undo what you did, give that creditor access to it. So if you set the systems up, even if you're just at a base layer right now, you're just starting out, then start at the base level, but plan and budget for that. Get the LLC, get insurance. Then as you scale and grow, you add the missing layer. Okay, now we're at a management company. You scale and grow. Now we need a very strong asset protection trust. So you just layer up as your wealth layers up.
Yeah. When I first started investing, what we did was we invested under our personal names. We just bought houses.
Yeah.
And I remember doing that. And it was like 8 or 9 years later that someone goes, dude, you get everything under your name. You need to put that thing in an LLC. And people ask me now, they go, well, I need an LLC to invest. And I kind of preface some of this stuff. I go, man, when you don't have any assets, like don't not take this investment. Don't not make this move. Don't, hesitate because you're not adequately prepared. Like you need to take some action to create some wealth. You got to do it. Right. And at some point later, you're going to have more assets that you actually need to protect. In the beginning, don't let it stop from slowing you down. That's kind of my mindset. But man, after you started making moves, now you're proactively investing. You need to start proactively thinking about how to protect your wealth in the future. And like I like the layers approach. What you said is, I didn't have a corporate structure, a C corp, an LLC. I didn't have a holding company. I have all these things that we have in place now. But over time, we kind of put different layers in. And so that's a big one right there. So if you miss that, rewind some of the stuff Brian was talking about, and like that, you just got to take a little bit of move. You can't get bogged down by everything you should be doing. Just take one step at a time, add one layer, and then go take a couple of proactive moves. Add another layer over time. Would you agree, Brian?
I agree with that. I also say, like, if you're starting out, part of your budgeting should be, okay, I know that I'm going to get 1 or 2 assets. So I should at least plan for, like, an LLC is not that much money.
A couple grand and a little bit of time.
Yeah, I'm like, you just pay a couple grand and realize like, okay, at least if I get sued, I get some kind of protection and I have insurance there as a buffer for capital. Great. Now you're at least starting out properly. Yeah. But you got to have the proper budget in place. Then as you scale and grow, remember, you're going to probably meet more people and add more cogs to the wheel that will then help you accelerate. So a good CPA, a good, real estate attorney, a good wealth manager, a good deal finder, your asset protection attorney. Yeah. So you're going to start adding to the team as you grow, which then will help you invest and leverage and grow faster and better.
Love it. Yeah. So that's key, right? Okay. Now we talked about a few things, right? You had inflationary period, the monetary system that we've built globally as we affect, everyone in the globe, our US dollar. The Fed is increasing rates every day. I can see it in my debt service payments. They're going up on, our floating rates. And it's like, man, this continues to occur, continues to happen. But also what happens in the US doesn't stay in the US. It affects the global monetary system. Like what we're doing right now is affecting some of the other countries. So, man, before we go into asset protection, like let's, maybe crack this open a little bit. How do the moves that we're making here help us in that broader discussion, or how does that work?
Well, I'm just like, from the asset protection perspective, you just have to look at the government's really not your friend. They're trying to figure out how to take money, and they're not going to take money from the poor because they're trying to take find money to give access to them for social programs to help them out. So, they're not going to be taxing the poor because, one, they're not going to take any money from them. The rich, generally, it's the middle class that they're coming after and they're picking on, and that's going to hurt the most. And so really, when you're the ones that are trying to invest to become wealthy And so it really becomes a fight. So you have to pay attention to like, okay, what's going on with inflation? What's going on with the dollar? What's going on in the, like our local government, our local currencies, and what's going on globally. And if you don't pay attention to this stuff, then you're just being unwise with your money, I think. And then two, when it comes to protecting it, you need to realize, where are we trying to protect it from and where's it coming from? So you really should pay attention and talk to your wealth managers and CPAs and tax guys, about what's going on in the global world, and create tax mitigation strategies. And sometimes a tax mitigation strategy could be, depending on where your wealth is at, okay, we need you to go buy another investment for forced depreciation, because then it's going to help you on your taxes. So, when you start taking into all of this into consideration, that's where you would go talk to your wealth managers, and guys like us, then we would just protect the assets in the correct bucket. But it's generally me talking to your wealth manager, talking to your CPA, and then making sure everybody's in alignment for the next investment.
Yeah, I love it. So let me pause on this too, Brian. So personally speaking, I can attest to one of the biggest level ups that we had was not investing for a higher return, but it was investing for a higher tax reduction. Yeah. It was amazing. I felt like I leapfrogged 2 or 3 positions in my net worth. I mean, I was like, because now it unlocked this mindset of how to go from a couple $100,000 in net worth to our first million. And I was a high earning individual. I was making $200,000-$300K a year, W-2. I was getting taxed $60,000+ a year.
You, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, this is middle class, where I work a ton. I pay a lot of taxes. But the first time we heard about accelerated depreciation, we heard about cost segregation. What we did was we invested $100K and we reduced our taxable income by like $60,000. So it didn't take a mathematician to say, man, I put in $100K, I got a $60K year one return, whether or not this thing's performing or not. And that pushed us from a couple $100,000 to doing it over and over and over again. We leapfrog, however you want to say it, the position. And I was like, man, that was not a bigger return. It was not paying taxes that we were used to. And
it takes money off the table and then decreases your taxable estate, but then you're making money. And then it really depends on where you're paying the money from. Like if you have a self-directed 401k or like all of that, fun stuff to set up. But I remember we were talking before we started, and you're like, okay, what's the difference between my type of clients who are like the ultra wealthy or like the wealthy, and like what are they doing differently versus, neighbor Joe who's investing? Well, neighbor Joe's obsessed about cash flow. And that's all they're trying to find is cash flow, like find a cash flowing property. Let
me pause you for a second, Brian. So like in this perspective, neighbor Joe, how many clients do you serve? So we get an idea, is it like, 100 every month, 1,000 a year, or what kind of overall perspective, can you give us? And then what percentage of that is what we're talking about? People looking for cash flow.
Yeah, I think neighbor Joe, who's your doctor who's looking to invest. Well, I want to say your doctor because they're generally looking for tax mitigation strategies.
Okay.
So let's just say it's your neighborhood cop, firefighter, nurse who's investing. I get a lot of them, or their teachers.
Is that what percentage of your client base? Like
I say like
25%, or
I say
25%.
25%.
So out of all the clients that talk to you, 25% of them really focused on like, how do I invest for cash flow?
Yeah, and they're just like cash flow specific, and they have like 3 or 4 properties, but all they look at is cash flow. And they're generally older, about to retire, and their main concern is, I'm using these properties to subsidize my income. I'm about to retire, so I don't want to lose it.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah, and their mindset though is strictly cash flow. Then you transition to, probably 75, 80% of my clientele, which are either the high earners, surgeons who are also investing in properties. And then we're talking with their wealth managers. They're really looking at tax mitigation first, and then decreasing the taxable estate. Yeah. And then they can always force cash flow from there. And and so it's just a difference of a mindset. But then if you buy, at least from what my clients' experiences are, if you buy through tax mitigation mindset first, then you're winning right off of making the deal. And then from there, the cash flow is just like the icing on the cake.
Yeah, dude. I was literally talking about this with my uncle. And if you're listening, just like 3 days ago, I go, man, the cake for me is this tax loss, and the icing is the return. When I literally had these things flip flop for years. But
yeah, I was out with some friends the other night, and we were having some margaritas and drinking. And they're telling me about their investments that they are doing for properties, and all I was hearing was cash flow. And I just asked a question. I'm like, have either one of you talked to your CPAs and talked about like the tax mitigation on this and where like forced depreciation cost seg? And like, no, why would I do that? I'm interested in cash flow. So I was like, all right, let's rechange our thought process on this.
Let's still slow down. I had it's hard for a lot of our listener base, in this discussion, because you have these epic internet characters. I've had some of them on my show. Like we had Grant Cardone, and he was our season 2 opener, maybe episodes 101 or something. And he is prolific in like investing for cash flow, which, when we soak enough of that stuff in, that's like, well, he's not wrong in investing for cash flow. I want cash flow too, but there are different stages that an investor may be in. And up to this point, for me personally, I'm not spending cash flow. I'm not living off cash flow. I'm like, man, all my cash flow from every investment is going back into my, like a savings account, so to speak, so that I can invest it again. And how quickly can I save up to do another one?
If you ask like guys like Grant or like Lane Kawaoka and those guys, and you're like, okay, hey, let's then break down like what are your metrics and what are you measuring off of? They'll be like, oh, I don't even pay
personally. They're like, I don't do cash
personally,
flow.
They're not. They're like literally just doing everything through their tax mitigation strategy.
So it's a mindset. And I think breaking that down, it's, if we're serious about creating wealth, if you're in the position where you don't have $10 million today, you're trying to create your first, second, or third.
Let's get going.
We're getting real, right? We're creating wealth today.
Yeah.
We're not protecting it. We're creating it right now. And so that is like, well, these are some of the big level ups that whether I'm getting 12, 13, or 17%, if I get 60% losses on the front end and I reduce my taxable income by like $60,000 on a 100K investment, that's where it's like, wow, that's the level.
And that's the importance of when you're an investor, is realizing the tax code's not written to take your money. I mean, maybe like a small fraction percentage of it is written on how to take your money. The rest of the like thousands of pages that are written are telling you where they want you to go invest to get government tax benefits from it. And housing is a major one. You like housing, energy, creating jobs. Like you hit like those three, one of those three or all of those three. Even if you have a loss, you're going to be writing off your loss because the government's wanting you to do those things.
Yeah, I love it. That part of it is amazing to me because someone told me that a few years ago. It's like, hey, the reason those things are there is the government's giving you incentive to go spend your money on things that they may not be able to do themselves, like produce clean, comfortable, affordable, safe housing for the mass majority of workforce that needs this housing. So they create a incentive, and you're the one that takes advantage of it, and you fulfill it for the U.S. It's like, great.
So start reading the tax code as the treasure map. Taxes will be very fun for you.
The treasure map. I like it, man. And before we keep going too, I like this part. So the treasure map. I wrote that down already, man. The treasure map.
I forget who taught it'll come up to me later on.
Well, if you remember, just interrupt me, man.
Yeah.
So the 75 to 80% of the rest of your clients that are investing in this different way, give us the golden, the golden map. Give us the flashlight that illuminates the process. Like how did they go from, creating wealth to this next, 2 or 3 leapfrogs? What, similarities, trends, anything that you feel comfortable sharing, like how did they get there? And what are they doing differently than everyone else is?
They didn't realize the importance of being involved with their wealth managers and CPAs on at least a quarterly basis. And so they're like what you're talking about, like, man, I am spending so much money in taxes. Like imagine them having to write quarterly taxes at like 60,000 a quarter or whatever. And you're just getting bled and like, man, this may not even be worth it anymore. And so my question is like, what's your team look like? like, what do you mean? Do you have a CPA? Like, no, I just do all my taxes. I'm like, so you're a CPA? You went to school for this? You're a wealth manager? There's nothing someone who's a professional who does this for a daily living can offer more sound advice than you? And like, well, no, that's such a good point. I'm like, here's a couple good CPAs and wealth managers to talk to. Just talk to them. And then just within one conversation, they're saving them like hundreds of thousands of dollars, And then the deal is so many CPAs will tell you, I wish my clients realize they can talk to me throughout the year. Don't just talk to me at the end of the year, because there's a lot more I could have done for them throughout the year if I knew what the heck they were doing. And we could have sandwiched tax write-offs. Like could have given them a better way to go about something versus just saying, hey, it's the end of the year. Here's everything that I spent. What can you do for me? Now you basically handcuffed them. And now they're just trying to do what they can do versus at least talk to your CPA quarterly, talk to your wealth manager quarterly. They should have some sort of program that allows you to have more access to them that you just pay in. It will pay for itself.
Yeah. I love it, man.
That's the big difference is the ultra wealthy and like even not the ultra wealthy, just like the high net worths or the high risk, they're talk to their CPAs all the time. Like I talk to my CPA almost every day.
There's your code. You lean on an expert and they help you and we help each other. Well, that's great, man. Well, I appreciate all of this conversation. I want to keep talking. So a few more minutes, but before I forget, let's do this for those that really want to, have a deeper conversation with you, get a little more granular on their own situation, talk about, their personal situation, see if you can help them. What's the best place for them to go to? Where do they reach out? How do they connect with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, they can jump on my website, www.btblegal.com. I have it set up more as an educational resource. I have lots of case law, client breakdowns, videos on there. I want you to be educated. Like, even if you're not ready for me, I want you to, as you're vetting attorneys and vetting the process, have good questions to ask or follow-up questions. And when you ask the attorney you're talking to these questions and like, well, hey, what about this case? What about the Anderson case? What about Grant, US versus Grant? And they don't have an answer for you. That's going to should make you, things that make you go, like, don't know if I want to work with this person that much. And I just want you to be educated. Or you can just email me directly, Brian, BRIAN at btblegal.com. And I generally do a free 30-minute consultation. I'd rather you get sound advice, whether I'm the right fit for you or you're the right client profile for me. We'll figure that out during the call, but then at least I can point you in the right direction.
Right on. Well, that's great, man. Well, before you split, let's break into this asset protection. So a lot of people don't even know, like, what is asset protection? And then we talked about these layers, like, what does that generally mean for people? And, just a short couple of minutes so that everyone gets the high level.
Yeah. So I'll just do like the quick cursory. So, like I said, asset protection, it's not traditional estate planning, right? It's just a modern way tool to balance out the system. And what we're doing, again, is just placing these legal barriers between your assets and the person suing you. Again, it has to be done before, just like insurance. You got to get the stuff set up in the time of peace, not when the castle is being attacked. So it's a barrier, like a safe for your gold or your guns or valuables. Anything of value you want to put behind the legal barrier and out of your personal name so that it's not easily attached with the lien or reached. Remember, you want to get the benefit and use of things. You just don't want to own them personally. Okay. Just like the rich. I love the Tony Robbins saying, like, success leaves clues, right? The rich don't own things in their personal names. Their businesses do, their LLCs do, their trusts do. They just get the beneficial use and enjoyment out of them and then separate out the legal liability of it. And so to understand and break down these layers, right? The key concepts kind of is what I call them, and tools that we use. I want you to think about wintertime, okay? We have three main tools that we use: LLCs, limited partnerships for management companies, and then asset protection trust. That's kind of the lay of the landscape when it comes to asset protection. Where you fall on that just depends on each client's individual risk profile. So now we're getting back to winter. When it comes to asset protection, we have different layers. The first entry layer is a base layer, it's going to sit on your skin. This is an LLC and insurance. This is when you're just starting out investing. You have, 0 to 3 units or properties. you probably have an exposed net worth of, below 250,000 nets. And then as you grow and you add more assets and you kind of hit that 4-unit mark, you're investing in multiple states, you have around 500,000, 700,000 nets. You want a mid layer, which is usually going to be a little bit thicker. It's going to be, made out of merino wool, or it's going to be a cardigan for you ladies. This is a management company. We generally use a limited partnership for this mid layer, which I can come back on another segment and break that down. And then when you hit around 1 million net worth, you want an outer shell waterproof layer. This is going to keep you nice and dry when you're warm, when it's raining, when it's like kind of, you're out in this really bad winter wonderland. This is your doomsday lawsuit protection. This is an asset protection trust. Specifically, we use a hybrid trust, which is a combination of an offshore trust that I domesticate through the IRS. And then I have the benefits of both worlds. I can break the bridge, be purely foreign, or I can keep it domestic when you're not being sued, and then you have none of the IRS tax filings, no 1035As, no FACTA disclosures. So it makes it very functional, but very, very strong.
Yeah.
But by layering, you're now more flexible, right? Like you can adjust to make yourself more comfortable. That's what you want. Just like, skiing, I can take the base layer off. I can take the mid layer off. I can take the outer shell waterproof layer off. I can be more comfortable. And so for all this to work, 4 things have to be true. First, the system that you create must be seen as impenetrable. Second, it must be managed properly. Third, the plan cannot attract a lawyer to actually want to try to challenge it, thinking that they can get a payday. That's going to be an example of like, well, I just have an LLC. Everybody in the world has heard of piercing the corporate veil. So if you're just relying on an LLC, expect that to be easily pierced. And then fourth, the plan just has to work. So then when a client comes to me, I now know a client, you want 4 things. 1, you're going to want an effective plan. 2, you want to control your plan, like control your assets, right? 3, you want reasonable and sustainable cost. If it's too expensive, you're just not going to set it up. And then 4, you want a plan that you can maintain easy compliance with the IRS with. If it just becomes too difficult to maintain the IRS compliance, after 1 or 2 years, you're just going to stop and the plan's going to fall apart. So as you go through the evaluation process, on how good an asset protection plan is that you're looking for, just remember the acronym ECCC: effectiveness, control, cost, and compliance. If you can check mark all 4 of those, you have something that's effective, works, and you're going to keep for a while.
All right. Look at that, man. What a good acronym there. And I think something memorable we'll be able to take and action on in the future. And man, no, it was a great conversation, brother. It was good to have you on and good to share a little bit of your insight and just hear good conversation. What anything from our side anything from your side that maybe you really wanted to talk about, something we didn't, we missed, I didn't ask you specifically about, or either that or just some last wisdom or nuggets for our listener base, man. Happy to open up to you, whoever you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I would say like for the listener base, just remember, don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Eventually, you just got to jump into the deep end of the pool, kick your arm, move your arms, kick your legs. Like, you're going to swim, you're going to float, you're going to stumble. Just remember, when you stumble, that's why you have asset protection, right? It's there. And when you're learning, you're going to make your most errors. And then when you're really rich and successful, then some deals start falling apart, then you're going to get massive lawsuits. So just realize it is what it is. It's part of growing. It's part of success. Part of, taking control of your own financial freedom, like the proverbial excrement happens in life. So just be prepared for it. And the reason of the layers is just like I said before, LLCs, there's major problems with them. They're disregarded entities. So if they're disregarded for tax purposes, they're going to be disregarded for lawsuits, meaning you're personally responsible. The other problem is charging order protections. Some states don't have them. People don't know where to set these things up. And so just realize you can't go buy another state's more beneficial laws if you have no connection to that state. So if someone says, just go run off and buy a Wyoming LLC, and you're not a resident of Wyoming and you don't own an asset in Wyoming, you think if you're a resident of California and you go buy a Wyoming LLC and put a piece of like California real estate in a Wyoming LLC, a judge is going to give anything about that? No. You can't just buy other states' more beneficial laws and bring them somewhere. And anonymity is not what people think anonymity is. You can't ghost lawsuits. It's not how our legal system is set up. It's a privacy mechanism, not a avoiding lawsuit mechanism. Once you're sued, you have to show up in court. Discovery begins. and you have to disclose your assets or lie to the court, say I have none, commit perjury, and go to jail. So just realize that's why we layer. LLCs are holding companies. Then you have management companies that own all those assets, maintain one tax filing. Then when you get that 1 million net worth mark, you add the really strong asset protection trust.
Right on. Hey, thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure, man. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to hopefully working with you in the future some more. And if anybody got a little bit of education, got a light bulb or two that's gone off since the conversation, please reach out to Brian, go to our podcast, give us a like and review. We'd appreciate it. Keeps us going, keeps us, the subscribes and the downloads flowing. And on the Five Talents podcast, we'll give you a lot more education over time. So thanks for joining us and appreciate your time. All right. See you.